This is the Happy Families podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. Dr. Justin Coulson, he's our parenting expert, leading us through this discussion today as we address the whole concept of autonomy for our children. I'm Susie. Luke's here with me as well. Let's get started.
Dr. Justin, I had a moment where I had a 10-year-old tantrum in a public place.
Ooh.
Then we had a fight. He was arguing with me. He was clearly wrong until he
says the man who has to be right.
until he said something that made me very aware that I was clearly wrong.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It was one of those moments where you go, you're so proud of your son for being so intelligent and articulate, and so angry at him for being so intelligent and articulate.
He put you in your place.
Yeah, completely.
Well, what happened? Let's hear the story.
So to try and keep the story as short as possible so we got time to deal with the therapy I need afterwards.
Yeah, you're a counsellor today. That's your role.
Right.
He was avoiding going on rides at the park we were at that were a bit more adrenaline appropriate for his age, but he was a bit nervous about it, so he was instead going on the toddler rides. I knew that his history shows that whenever he builds up enough courage to push through that and do it, he loves it. So I was trying to encourage him to do it. I was trying to keep his choice, that he chose what to do, but to give him multiple reasons why it would be a good thing to do, because I wanted him to have fun.
Yeah, and you want him to expand his experience while he's there, and
the history. If he was one that showed that he hates it and it's just fun to me, but it wasn't to him, then I would not have done it. But he's shown that he loves doing it whenever he pushes through that nervousness barrier. So I knew he wanted fairy floss, so I said, if you take this ride, then you'll have some fairy floss. He got so upset with me.
Oh, yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, but I don't like that you saw it straight away. Right? I wish this was less obvious what I was doing wrong. But he got so upset with me, and he yelled at me, and he took off and he hid in a public place.
Wow. That's scary for you.
I was furious.
Oh, yeah, okay, right.
And so I said, I don't even know how to respond when we got him back. I don't even know where to go from here, because on the one hand, his behaviour was like, it was so against everything that we've always talked to them about, that the idea is that how do we keep having a good time with him and then reward him storming off and not punish the other brothers? And I'm like, where do I even go from here? So I was talking to him, and he was yelling at me for trying to force him to do something he didn't want to do. And I said, I wasn't trying to force you to do anything. I was giving you the choice. I absolutely was trying to convince you, because I think that you would have had a really good time. So I was giving you reasons to convince you. And he said, no, you were trying to force me because I wanted fairy floss and I didn't want to go on the ride. And you made it so that I had to miss out on one of them.
He felt manipulated. He felt controlled. He felt like you were taking away his autonomy.
All right. Well, that's enough.
That's just, I'm not trying to make you feel bad.
That's a big word, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
autonomy. So he's 10 now, and I reckon just in the last couple of months, he's taken a big leap forward in emotional maturity. And in that, I don't think a few months ago he would have been able to articulate that spot that Luke put him in. But he and I even had a conversation recently where I felt like he articulated well what he was feeling, but he also was really good at coming to his own conclusions. It's a new level.
Isn't that exciting as your kids develop?
Word.
But autonomy is, we're built with this desire to make our own choices, to behave volitionally. The scientific term is, I want to behave volitionally. I want to feel like I'm in control. And when we get technical and talk about what Luke's done here, when we make rewards conditional on a certain behavior, that can feel controlling, that can feel manipulative. Yeah. Now, I know that life kind of works like that. You know, we go to work and we get the reward. You don't get paid if you don't show up. Yeah. I get that. But in this context, you're there to have fun as a family. It's not supposed to be a time where love is shown contingently.
Yeah.
Do this and you'll get that. And so what's happened is he's been feeling safe and he's been feeling like he belongs there. And I mean, this applies not just to you at the theme park with your son. This applies to any parent who's trying to coax their child to live expansively, and that child is responding with a little bit of apprehension, a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety. What's actually going on inside their brain is the limbic system, the part of the brain that's in charge of emotions, specifically the amygdala, which is the bit that regulates fear responses. It goes into overdrive. It's the part of the brain that says, I must protect you at all costs.
My 8-year-old calls it the guard dog.
That's it. Yeah, okay. So the amygdala is the little guard dog. It goes, don't go there, stay away. I don't want to go on that ride. It looks scary. Overprotection mode. All of a sudden, in walks Dad or mum and says, but you love it when you do this sort of thing, and this is going to give you new experiences, and this is going to help you to build resilience and be courageous and be brave. And we do this all the time with our kids, right? You can ride the bike, you can cross the balance beam, you can climb the rock wall, you can go on the adventure thingy at Dream World or whatever it is. And so we try to bribe them. But what happens in their brain is they start to seize up. They start to get even more concerned because now they're saying, I'm feeling afraid and you're trying to make me do something that makes me feel even more afraid. Yeah. The real trick is, how do we get past that? Because they, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, it's good for them to do that. And yet we want to help them to feel safe.
So how do we find that line between helping them to see what they should be doing versus giving them the autonomy to choose?
So tricky. This is going to be so good for you, but I don't want to do it. But it's going to be, I'll bribe you. I'll do anything to make you do it. And all of a sudden, you're controlling me. You make me feel horrible. I reckon it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes compassion. You may remember in another conversation we had, I talked about how compassion means that we actually suffer with our children. That's the literal meaning. Compassion is to suffer with. And I think that when our kids are really resistant to something that we know is going to be good for them, trying to use some sort of an extrinsic motivator is typically going to backfire. They're going to get upset with us, they're going to feel manipulated and coerced, and it's going to turn into tantrums, or worse, they might run off in a public place, as your son did with you, Luke, and say, no, I'm not part of this at all. I reckon the best thing that we can do is say, I sense that this is making you feel really nervous. And then just wait. And they say, yes, I'm afraid. What we're trying to do is we're trying to tap into or explore the emotional world that they're experiencing. Now, I know some people are rolling their eyes and going, oh, for goodness sakes, this is all that touchy-feely stuff. We've got to tap into their emotional world. I don't have time for this. They just need to do it. And sometimes they actually might just need to do it, depending on where you are and what your circumstances are. But more often than not, we can actually have a 2-minute conversation. And that's about all it takes. Oh, by the way, how much time did you lose looking for your son and then scolding him and trying to work through it all? Much easier to do it the right way at the start than try to fix it all up at the end. So for 2 minutes, you say, I sense that you're really scared about this. What is it that worries about you? What is it that you're worried about in relation to doing this? Once you kind of have a good picture of what's going on for them, their emotions start to drop down. I know I've said this to you before as well. High emotions, low intelligence.
Correct.
While they're feeling anxious, while he doesn't want to go on the ride, while they don't want to have that new experience, emotions are going through the roof because the guard dog of the brain, their amygdala, is going, stay away, overprotection, and they can't think through it. As we talk through how they're feeling and we say, I get it, sometimes I feel nervous too, and let's talk about that nervousness. The guard dog stops barking, they start to feel stable and level emotionally. Their emotions drop down, which means their intelligence goes back up. They can start to have a logical conversation with you. At which point you say, well, there's a couple of reasons I reckon this is something that we should do together. Let's talk about them. And so you might say, we want to stay together as a family. Or can you see how much everyone's laughing? Or we think that this will be something that you will really enjoy. Do you remember that time when we did the treetops walk and you were so scared? But when we came out of that walk, you thought that was incredible. Or the time we went on that really fast thingy, doobie, whatever it is that they've done that pushed them once before. The time we did that, you didn't want to do it, but you felt so good. I reckon this is one of those times. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm not going to ask you to do any more scary things at all today. But I reckon I'm right this time. Will you try it just once? So you have this conversation where you explore their world, you explain your position, and then you empower them.
Yeah.
What if after saying, I think this is good now, they still say no? Do we just accept that?
Yes and no, it depends. I think it really depends on the situation, on the child, where you are, how much pressure there is. I'm the kind of dad, a bit like Luke, and I think it's a dad thing. Dads are like, come on, you can do it. Dads do tend to push their kids to take a little bit more of a risk. And the research around risk taking is that kids who take more risks tend to be more resilient. They tend to also understand their limits better because taking the risks helps them to find their limits more effectively. Yeah. And it does tend to aid their positive development. Mums are more likely, and I know I'm dividing this along gender, and it's not always, but as a generality, mums are more likely to say, it's okay, you don't have to. So as a dad, I'm more inclined to say, let's just push a little more. And you might say, I'll tell you what, now that I understand you and you understand me, you're still reluctant. Let's see if I can sweeten it. You don't have to. We're buying fairy floss anyway, but we'll get the fairy floss as soon as the ride's done. Okay, so the fairy floss isn't conditional on riding or not. That turns it into a reward, and that's not fair. But what we're doing is we're saying, instead of getting the fairy floss at 3 o'clock the Savo when we leave, we'll do the ride and then we'll get the fairy floss. We're just bringing it forward. We're making it more salient, more present. The whole idea, though, is that we're giving them their autonomy. And ultimately, we want them to feel like they're choosing it because they feel understood and they recognise that we've got some wisdom and it could be worth doing. If it turns into something where they start to go into full meltdown mode, they start to have a genuine anxiety experience, then this is not something that we want to continue, especially in a public place. It's just going to be embarrassing and ugly for everyone. So we go and find something else that they're going to be happy with. But I think, push, listen, work with, don't do too.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Don't do it to them.
All right. I reckon there's enough for me to arm my toolkit there and avoid that situation again.
Good luck.
Doctor, thanks. You know I'm going to need it. Dr. Justin Coulson, thank you so much.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Sissy.
For more information on this and loads of other topics to do with parenting, you can go to the Happy Families website, happyfamilies.com.au. And if you're interested in having Dr. Justin Coulson come and speak at your event, then find out more details at justincoulson.com.